Welcome pilots, my name is Hybrid V and we are back once again to watch your takeoff and landings here in Star Citizen in the brand new, or should I say returning, Levski here in 4.4, which just came out with this update, and it looks gorgeous. Now, if this is the first time you've ever watched this show, this is where I go around the various spaceports and space stations around Star Citizen, and I watch players as they come and go from those locations, and I give them a rating out of 10 based on how cinematic their takeoffs or landings are. And the criteria for a cinematic or smooth landing or takeoff, as I also like to call it, is that we look for smooth landings or takeoffs that look like something out of other sci-fi media. So for example, like films and TV and whatnot. And you'll see a lot of commonalities with that type of media and what we're looking for here. And what that includes is takeoff and landings that are smooth with minimal hesitation, so there's no keyboard catting, there's no stair-stepping action going on there. We'll also subtract points for any type of contact with the ground or hangars. After all, in every cinematic sci-fi film you watch of ships landing, they're not exactly going to be crashing in the ground unless that was intentional for the story. The other thing we're looking for too is proper VTOL usage. Now in Star Citizen, VTOLs are not necessarily 100% needed. Even if you have a full load of cargo, your ship will probably be just fine. But we're looking for it here anyway because it's just that added little bonus we look for. Now, the other thing that we're also looking for is a player pulling their gear out right before they touch down. And of course, as they lift up off the pad, they gear up immediately instead of flying with the gear down all the time. Now, I get comments all the time in my videos of people saying, well, pilots in real life don't necessarily do that. They have their gear out early. And also, of course, if you're in space like this, having your gear out early doesn't really matter because it's space, it's a vacuum, right? And also, of course, you can't currently overspeed your gear with the way the game is now. You will be able to in the future. However, that's not the point. We are looking for players that are going that extra mile to pull off that cinematic style landing or takeoff. So that means having the gear down right before touchdown. Not everybody's going to do it, I understand that. But those that go the extra mile, you're going to see, guarantee in this video, you're going to see some players who take a little bit of that extra pride in their landing, and you're going to see how much more beautiful that looks compared to the typical takeoff or landing that you or many other players out there might come across. Alright, I think that's enough rambling for now. I think we should probably get straight to the action. And look at this beautiful view here. As you can see, a player off in the distance crossing Nyx. Looking gorgeous. This is what I meant in my sneak peek a while back when Nyx was in Evocati about how it feels like you're underwater when you're out here. It's beautiful. All right, let's see who our first customer is. And we have a small hangar inside the borehole opening up. Let's see what we got. I have an Intrepid off at the side there for some strange reason. And then we have what appears to be a Shiv taking off here. And it looks like their gear is, yes, their gear is up, which is exactly what I like to see. Now, the Shiv does not have VTOLs like the traditional Cutlass Black, so we don't have to take points off for that beautiful takeoff. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is what we're looking for, at least in a cinematic takeoff. Obviously, it would look a little bit cooler if the Shiv had VTOLs, but the Shiv doesn't have VTOLs, so it doesn't matter. Here, conversely, here's the opposite over here. So we have a 325 taking off with its gear still down, and it's hesitating, mostly because it's looking at what appears to be like a component or something down there, and it is just kind of sniffing its new surroundings. This could be a new player after all. Who knows? Maybe this 325 belongs to some new player or a returning player. You don't see too many of the 3 series anymore these days. They tend to be a little bit less common. Not the greatest ships in the world, although word is ships are changing pretty dynamically with the new engineering patch coming out in the next update. So away they go, pulling the gear up. So that Shiv is an example of like a 10 out of 10 takeoff. No hesitation. Gear was already up as soon as they were up in the air like that, and then away they went smooth and steady like that. Whereas you see that 325, a lot of hesitation, no gear retraction early enough, so the gear was kind of a little bit late there in the retraction, as well as them just kind of hanging around the area for too long. Look at the C2 also, by the way. And so that would be, I would subtract multiple points for things like that. So something like that would just be a typical like 5 or a 6 out of 10 in that case, because it's really kind of middle of the road. It's something you'd see all the time in Star Citizen with a lot of players. So that would be kind of like the middle of the road kind of takeoff there in terms of pointage. Now we have a Hercules on approach. It appears to be, that's not a C2, that is actually a M2. Coming in, gear early deployment before they head into the air shield there. I usually like to have the gear down before, or actually after I enter the, oh goodness, look at that landing right in there, just dug their nose right into the ground. So we have early gear deployment. I usually look for gear deployments after they enter the air shield. That's usually where I give full points. In this case, they had their gear out early. They also didn't use VTOLs. The Hercules has those little flappy wings on the sides that also act as VTOL engines as well too. And they also tuck the wings in, which makes it a little bit smaller when you want to squeeze in, even though it doesn't matter for the extra large hangars as much, but still, it's nice to have. What do we got over here? What is this? Ooh. A Paladin. Paladin's one of my favorite ships that came out in the recent updates. Beautiful, beautiful gunship. One of my favorites. So we had that early gear deployment, no VTOL usage, and then that absolutely awful landing there where they dug their nose into the deck like that. So that is also going to be, I'm going to give that like a 5. It could have definitely been a lot better for sure. If they had saved the landing and been a little bit smoother and landed on their gears a lot smoother, I would probably give it a lot more points for that. But yeah, definitely not the greatest. All right, we have early gear deployment here, and it looks like no VTOL usage. Also, we do have a little bit of hesitation and a little bit of stair-step action. So it's not as smooth, but I do like that touchdown. Very nice. It was also very controlled despite the stair-stepping going on here. That's kind of something I'd like to see a lot better. And it's definitely indicative of somebody who's kind of using mouse and keyboard. Nothing wrong against mouse and keyboard. There's definitely ways you can improve your takeoff and landings to be a little bit smoother than that. And it just takes practice and getting used to your control scheme. So in that regard, if you're a player that uses mouse and keyboard and you want to improve your takeoff or landings in that regard, decoupled is your friend there, and using space brake as well to slow yourself down as you're coming in for your descent, it always is going to be the best way to do it. So we had early gear deployment, we had no VTOL usage, and we had a little bit of stair-step action, but everything was smooth and controlled. It was also centered on the pad. I don't generally do too much of the centering on the pad thing anymore because a lot of people are also using the cargo elevators, so they don't even bother being centered because they're going to land next to the cargo elevators. So it's not as important anymore to me personally. So I'm going to say that's probably a solid 6. It's relatively average, but it's above average because it was very controlled in their descent profile. There wasn't too much hesitation. There was that stair-stepping, but it definitely could be a lot better for sure. And it's something you see very commonly in Star Citizen, those types of landings, which is why I would give it a 6 out of 10. All right, let's see what we get next. And what have we got here? We have somebody coming into a small hangar down here, and that looks to be a 3 series. And indeed it is. It is a 300, actually even rarer than any of the other 300. This is I believe, a 315P, which is the exploration variant of the 300 series. Gear down early as we come in. One of the unique facets of the 315 is it has a tractor beam on the nose. All right, looks like we're bringing it down a little bit of that stair-step action and hesitation as we come on in, but overall nice and centered. I do like that. Very nice. So we have early gear deployment, and of course we have some stair-step action here. I will, I'm going to give them a point for at least being centered. I told you guys that I don't really mind the centering too much, but I do like when people go out of their way to make sure that their landing is centered for anything that they're not necessarily doing anything specific, like for example using the cargo elevators. So I'm going to say early gear deployment, stair-step action, some hesitation, and I'll say, that's probably going to be a solid, it could be a 7, but I'm going to say it's an 8 because they're centered. Now, 8 is probably a little bit too high than I normally would go for, but again, I do want to emphasize that they did a pretty good job there keeping things centered. It looks really nice. I like that. Just need to clean up that stair-step action that you got going there. Your saving grace is you don't have VTOLs, and of course, if you had the gear down right before you touch down, you get even more points for that. Anyway, let's see who we get. Oh, wait, actually, we got over here what appears to be an Asgard looking for the smaller hangars on the side. There are medium hangars over here on the back tail end where that Paladin was earlier, and the Asgard is going to be sent there as well too. So it looks like, are you going to, yes, you're going to be landing. All right, let's see how this Asgard lands here. Now their VTOLs are not in the down position, which is fine because we're in space right now. We're in a vacuum. I usually like to see the VTOLs be activated once they go through the air shield. Looks like we have a slight early gear deployment. I like the effort there, though, at least putting the gear down just a little bit further back there. Could have been better. And, ooh, a little bit of a spinal crush there on the landing. Careful there, coming down a little too hard. Definitely a decoupled landing there for sure, I could tell, because there was no hesitation. That just went down. It wasn't super fast, but it also wasn't too slow, and there wasn't any of that stair-step action. You can see a Corsair taking off over here. So for the Asgard, we had early gear activation, no VTOL usage. Now, obviously, they didn't have as much stair-step action, but they landed really hard on the deck. So I'm going to have to subtract points away. So that's going to be about a 6 out of 10. I will give them that one extra point because they were centered at least some. There's that. Again, I don't really care too much, but at least they made the effort. Okay, we have somebody coming in at high speed here. Looks like they're slowing down just in time to land at the small hangar. And it looks to be a Hornet, gear already down as they approach. Let's see how they pull this off. Looking smooth so far. Looking really good. I like this approach. Minimal soup. Ooh, a little bit. Ooh, stair-step action. And they're also pulling the nose forward. I think they're trying to figure out where they are on the pad. And ooh, some spinal compression as well on the touchdown. So early gear activation, we have some stair-stepping. And then, of course, we have some of that nasty spinal compression on the touchdown. Really, really rough on that touchdown. So I'm going to say it's about a 6 as well. On that touchdown, I'll give them an extra point for being at least decently centered. They had it nice and gently lined up and smooth in their approach, and then they kind of stair-stepped at the end there, so kind of took a little bit away from it. So I'll say that's a good solid 6 right there. Definitely above average, but could be better. Asgard there already had its gear on the way out. Very nice looking. That would generally be like a 10 out of 10 takeoff. Takeoffs are the easiest, obviously, to pull off. I mean, look at this Paladin. It looks beautiful. Now, hopefully we'll get some more takeoffs. I tend to get landings more because landings tend to be a lot more technical. It requires a lot more skill to pull off properly. So I love rating landings. Takeoffs, though, on general, like they're very easy as long as you lift up, gear up, use VTOL where appropriate, and then head about your way. No hesitation. Then that's a 10 out of 10. It's very simple and very easy. Very cinematic. All right. Let's see what we get next. Ooh, we got red trails over here. That tells me this is a Vanduul ship on approach. Vanduul being the baddies in Squadron 42. Being the bad guys over here as this bad guy is on approach in his Stinger heavy fighter. Looks like we have early gear deployment. Let's see how they fared. Looking good, nice and controlled, and spinal compression. Well, at least the Stinger's pilot gets to lay down, so instead of having a ruptured spine, maybe they have like a ruptured spleen or something like that. I don't know, but either way, still pretty rough. For early gear deployment, now the Stinger doesn't have VTOL, so that saves them a little bit there, and unfortunately that spinal compression is something that I just don't like seeing in landings a lot. I would love to see that be a lot more smoothed out. Folks, if you're using decoupled in your landing, remember you can use space brake to slow yourself down. If you want to avoid the stair-stepping action, I strongly recommend you try to avoid doing coupled landings because that does kind of create that ugly stair-step as you're landing. It just makes those digital inputs very obvious. So I'm going to say that is going to be, I don't want to give them a 7 because the VTOLs are what saves them there. So I'm going to say that's also going to be a 6. I'm going to be a little bit harsher in my critiques just because I really, really want to see people try to put some effort into these landings. Let's see how they go. We have a Hull C coming in here. I have a Hull C. I haven't actually used it in Levski. I don't know if it's actually working with the actual cargo elevators. I know that every time a patch comes out, things break, and Hull C is one of the most commonly broken ships in this game, especially when it comes to its gameplay loop. Also has the custom skin there. Very, very cool. So if you're a Hull C owner, let me know if you've been doing trades at Levski. Has it been working for you or has it not? Let me know, because if it is working, I do really want to actually use the Hull C. I have not used it in a long time because it tends to break a lot. So let me know. Let me know. All right. Looks like there's still a lot of action going on here. Let's go ahead and cut the cameras and see what we find next. All right. There is a distinct RSI Dorito on approach here. Yes, we have a Zeus on approach here. Waiting for the doors to open there, so there's a little bit of that hesitation, but that's because they're waiting for the doors. Gear is a little bit early in deployment. Now, the Zeus does have VTOLs, but they can be a little bit hard to find because, like all RSI ships, they tend to be on the underneath centerline fuselage section of the ship, so it's a little bit hard to identify whether they're on or not as they line themselves up for the cargo elevator. Ooh, not even very lined up even for the gear, just a really rough touchdown there. Yeah, very, very nasty. So we have early gear activation. There's some hesitation because they're waiting for the doors to open. And then, of course, as they came in and landed, they had that really uncentered lineup where they just landed really hard on the front trike of that gear. So that is going to actually be a 5 out of 10, mostly because it just didn't look very presentable. Ooh, speaking of RSI Doritos, we have a Dorito of Doom coming out of this hangar. We have a Perseus heavy gunship. Gear already up on the way out. Can we see if the VTOLs are active? The VTOLs are not active. They would be active as soon as they're going up like that. Ooh, look at that. It has a little bit of an escort on his way out as well, too. Looking really good. So we had early gear lifting up. So the early gear retraction, which was good. They were waiting for the doors to open, and then away they went. So everything was good. The only thing is I did not see them use VTOLs. I did not see those blue strips on the bottom of the ship, so that would be a 9 out of 10 takeoff there. Let's see what we got over here. We have a Cutlass on the deck. VTOLs are already engaged here, which is always a good sign. Now, the Cutlass, they could be powered off, because some people actually keep VTOLs on, and then when they power the ship on, the VTOLs just turn off and people forget. So let's see if this pilot actually is using VTOLs for their takeoff, which can be really, really fun to watch. The Cutlass has a lot of power in VTOLs. Like, the moment you lift up, you're probably going to end up getting really close to that ceiling, so you have to be very cautious about how much power you apply in your upward strafe when you're using the Cutlass. And yep, so they powered the ship on, and then the VTOLs went to standard mode there. So yeah, and then, come on, retract the gear, retract the gear. No, they did not retract the gear, so they disengaged VTOL probably because they powered the ship on, and then of course they did not retract the gear in time for leaving the hangar, so that would be a solid 7, probably could even be a 6, but it's definitely like a 7 in my book. I'm going to take a short break here, but while I do it, I might as well show you what a 10 out of 10 landing is, or at least what I'm looking for here. As you can see, I'm lining up my vector indicator here. I'm in decoupled mode, so I'm going to come in nice and smooth, and as soon as I clear the air shield, that's when I'm clear to pull my gear down. And then when I need to slow down, I'm just using my space brake. I'm not using any other inputs, just using my space brake right here. Slow her down, and then nice and butter smooth on that landing. And that's exactly what we're looking for in a 10 out of 10 landing.
Your adventure, courtesy of Kruger Intergalactic. Systems active.
Good animations, good sounds, good VFX, and you have an absolutely perfect ship. I love the Kruger designs. CIG's audio team has absolutely been crushing it, and I absolutely love the sounds they've been doing with like the Perseus, the Clipper, and of course the Wolf here. Let's go ahead and get ourselves out of here of the side hangars. I love side hangars. I know a lot of you who've watched my show for a while, you know that I've harped on side hangars for a while just because they are superior in my opinion. Ooh, look at that. Vulture is dead. They are absolutely superior because of the views that you get. I think they're also the easiest, not only to take off, but they're also the easiest to land. Now, I know some people will disagree about the landing part, but I hate vert hangars. I just hate them. They're really boring. Vert hangars also force people to nose down a lot because they have to identify the position they're going in. Now, that might change when we get landing helpers in the near future, but as it stands right now, everybody just nosing in on their approach just looks really bad. I just don't like it. Now, we'll see if that changes in the future. But currently, as it stands, I just don't like vert hangars. When you take off, you don't get to get the wide views and beautiful vistas that you see when you come out of a side hangar. We have what appears to be a Sandtalk, a little bit damaged actually. Sandtalk coming in, one of his little whiskers are gone. It's coming in really fast, and that is because the server's lagging apparently. Yes, hopefully the server holds up a little bit, but it seems it's a little bit laggy. Now that lag could be the server, it also could be this player. One thing I have noticed throughout the years is players tend to rubber band when their FPS is very, very low, and that could very well be the case for this Sandtalk player here. The server seemed to be okay on my end. I haven't noticed any issues, although that dead vulture there does tell me there might be some problems potentially with the way the server's doing synchronization here. So let's go ahead and follow this guy on in, and let's see how they land. Sandtalk is probably one of the more challenging Xian ships to land, and the reason for that is when in landing mode, those main engines, right there, those rotating it. Okay, you're just going to teleport behind me again. All right, cool. And again, that rubber banding could be the server. It also could be this player's PC. If you have like a pause, like your game lags for a second or something like that, you tend to rubber band to other players. In that landing mode, you can see those main engines are now rotated into this kind of horizontal configuration, and that actually causes the ship to be a lot less stable when you're landing. Now in zero G, not that big of a deal, but when you're in gravity, the ship can... Oh, he just lost another wing here on what appears to be some kind of invisible geometry from what I can tell. So I'm going to scrub this player's rating because it seems like they're kind of getting screwed by the server. And I have a sneaking suspicion as to why that's happening. But yeah, so when those engines are in that horizontal configuration and you're in gravity of any type, the Sandtalk can be kind of hard to use. It's a real pain in the butt. Being a Sandtalk owner myself, I understand how much of a pain it is. Try going in VTOL with a Sandtalk in atmosphere and trying to land. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. But yeah, so my suspicion here is that there's an issue with the server here. I saw that dead vulture over there, and then this Sandtalk just hit some invisible geometry. And what happens, and it's a problem that CIG still hasn't really gotten around to being able to fix, probably because it's a long-term thing that needs to be adjusted, and that has to be with the instance hangars. Sometimes when you open or close a hangar, sometimes the hangars also spawn someone else's hangar on top of your hangar, and you end up seeing this big wall when you're landing. And sometimes that happens when you're taking off too. And if you touch that wall, you blow up. Sometimes that wall will also spawn on top of you while you're landing, and that causes your ship to turn pink, and then it explodes, and it will probably end up killing you in the process too. And that is an incredibly frustrating experience. Also, this is this Zeus is pulling a auto land. Yeah, the auto land is back, by the way, folks. You can see this very robotic landing as I come in at a very fixed velocity and perfectly centered on the pad. So that auto land there, I usually take a lot of points away from auto land. I know some people like to use it because they feel not very comfortable with their landings, or they just want to be lazy about it. That's fine. But again, remember, for the show, we're looking for players that are going a little bit above and beyond and doing a nice cinematic landing. In general, it doesn't matter. It works fine. But in this case, I would take points away from them. I'm just going to say that's a 5. I'm just going to give them a straight up 5 for using auto land. It's just a straight 5. Now we have a Corsair leaving the hangar. Gear is down, lagging a little bit. Although they're cycling their configuration, which is interesting. They're also not using any VTOLs. I find it a little bit fascinating that this Corsair owner knows how to cycle their configuration, but not knowing to pull their gear up as they take off. So it's just like an oversight on their part. In that regard, I will just give them a 6 out of 10. It was cool, it was smooth, and they did cycle their configuration, so it looked awesome, but they need to pull their gear up, and they need to use VTOLs as well, too, if they want to get that better rating. Alright, let's see who we get next. Oh, actually, I think we already have our next customer here. We have a Lightning on approach. Never mind, so I don't have to cut my footage here. Let's see. Ooh, look at that. We have a Cutlass Red. We have down there, I didn't see what that was. Was that Apollo down there? I couldn't quite tell. But we have a Lightning on approach. I do want to watch the Lightning coming on in. I can see the gear housings opening. Oh, slow down, slow down. Ooh, that's a little bit of a nasty impact there by the Lightning. They're a little bit shook up there. It's kind of weird. I think maybe they applied too much throttle. Maybe their game froze, though usually when people's games freeze, they tend to rubber band a little bit there. So very strange. All right, let's see how they land here. Gear is not out yet, which I do like to see. There we go. There comes the gear out. Looking good. All right, bring it in. No, they hit the gear button again by accident, not realizing they already pulled the gear out, so now they got to cycle it forward again. There we go. Okay. And then they're going to have a lowrider bounce on the pad there. Oh, good. Then they're going to add some spinal compression to add some insult to injury there. So we did have an impact, and as many of you know watching my show, if you have an impact, you're generally going to get less than a 5 on that rating. So that's going to be a 3 out of 10 on that takeoff. Look at this Perseus on its way out. Looking beautiful. Gears already up. No VTOL usage, though, so that would be a 9 out of 10. Very nice, though. Very, very controlled. Very beautiful. Love to see it. All right, so let's see who we get next. We have what appears to be an Asgard on approach as well, too. Let's see how this Asgard does here. It looks like they are looking for a pad on the way in. See if there's anybody else coming in. Nope, nobody else coming in so far. Taking their time here. Let's see on their approach. Let's see. I'm hoping somebody's going to use the external pads over here. I love the external pads. There's some players already landed there. But I haven't seen too many people use the external pads today. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more external pad usage here shortly. And let's see. So, oh, hey. Asgard is going to use the external pad, I think. Looks like it. All right, let's see. Coming on in, and they're already got their VTOLs active. And here comes the gear as they're about to touch down. Looking good, looking solid. A little bit of stair-step action could be improved there, so I like that they use VTOLs. I like that they had the gear out just at the right time, just as I'd like to see it. And then their touchdown was a little bit rough there because they were using some stair-step action. I'll give them a 7 out of 10. I think that looked pretty good. Now, I think their VTOLs were a little bit earlier than I'd like, but it's fine. We're in vacuum, so we can allow it, right? Anyway, let's see who we get next. All right, we have an Asgard on final approach here. Looks like they're waiting for the hangar doors to fully open. It looks like their gear is up. I like to see that. Thank you very much. Looks like they are kind of stair-stepping a little bit as they're trying to kind of line themselves up. Here goes the gear as they're going through the air shield. Very nice. VTOLs are also active. Love to see it. And a nice, decent touchdown. Very, very nice. I will say the stair-stepping could be improved a little bit, so I'll give them a 9 out of 10 because that's exactly what I'm looking for. Oh, look! You see little players hopping out. 1, 2, let's see how many we got in here. Is that just the 2? No, not including the pilots, so that'll be 3, 4, All right, cool. So, oh, 5. Okay, so 6, 7. Any more? Any more? It's like a clown car of players hopping out. Might be an org or, you know, a group of friends or something doing something here. So it's cool to see the Asgard and or Valkyrie being used like that, because that's what it's designed for. It's a people mover, essentially. The Asgard may be a vehicle mover, but a lot of players like to use it also as just a regular dropship for moving troops around. So it's always cool to see a lot of players utilizing it in a team setting like that. You don't see that very often. At least when I'm over here watching players come and go, I usually just see players flying big ships or even fighters just on their own, and you don't really see them doing anything else with other players. It's very rare. Very so often. It's very rare. Alright, so we have a Constellation on approach for the external pads. Let's see how they land here. No fans being deployed. Gear is already out here, and a little bit of stair-step action as they approach there, and a nice soft touchdown at least. That's nice. Oh, hey, look, and they have a gunner too. So, just as I was saying, not many players doing stuff together, but it looks like they are here at least for that Constellation. And somebody's landing beneath me there. I just want to be careful. I don't want to get in their way and get bumped into. So for that Constellation Phoenix, I will say there was a little bit of hesitation there, and then early gear deployment there as well. So I want to say that that is going to be about an 8. I'll give them an 8 for sure. I would love to see the VTOL fans being used, and I would love the gear coming out right before they touch down. So it could be improved for sure. Very nice. And you can see the player that I was just avoiding here, this wolf, looks like they might be refueling. Yes, indeed they are. They're taking off. Greetings, comrade, fellow wolf player. I'll give you the traditional roll. Thank you. Enjoy your day, sir. Also, make sure you pull your gear up before you take off like that. Come on. Come on. You got to show off for the fellow wolf owners there. You know, you got to be a little bit of a show off. All right, let's move on. Hope is here. We have an extra large hangar opening up over here. What have we got? Actually, something is being called in at the same time. You don't always see this bug very often, but it is cool when you do see it. And that is when sometimes the hangar is open to you. You can visibly see inside when somebody's calling the hangar. I don't know why it does this sometimes, but you can see it just like this. It's very cool. As you can see, this Idris coming up from the depths. Very, very cool. Also, that shark tooth livery, very on point. Very love it. And with the K laser beam on the front, chef's kiss. Love it. Beautiful. But anyway, yeah, so this hangar is going to close on itself eventually, because I guess the game is going to recognize that it's like, oops, I wasn't supposed to be open. But that is always fun to watch when you get to see a player ship come up like that. That's a really cool thing to watch from above. Anyway, let's move on. And what have we got here? Small hangar opening up, and we have a Cutlass of some description, a Cutlass Red to be more specific. Taking off. Gear is already down, not being retracted yet. No VTOLs being applied as well. And of course, even worse is no emergency lights are on as well. So that is a very disappointing takeoff. Also very slow and hesitating. So in this regard here for this pilot, I'm going to say that they are having no gear retraction, no VTOL usage, and a lot of hesitation on their way out. So I'll say that's a 5 or 6. Yeah, let's give them a 6. I'll be a little bit more generous to say it's a 6 on that takeoff. Could be better for sure. How about a little bit of a gratuitous Perseus shot here, especially this player is just kind of AFK in the front gun. Get a nice frontal shot. Would like to see that tray be up a little bit so I can get a really nice shot here with the lighting and whatnot. This looks really, really beautiful. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Just wanted to get a gratuitous shot of that Perseus. What is this over here? Another Perseus? Yeah, looks like a Perseus trying to dock. All the docking collars I've had bad luck with here at Levski. Seems to be misaligned or just all kinds of issues. And that player just got stored, so they just pop out of existence. Yeah, I've had no good luck with the docking collars here at Levski before using my ships that dock, actually. So, yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend it right now until CIG gets that fixed. Anyway, let's see what we get next. All right, Constellation Phoenix on final approach for the smaller hangar over here. Let's see how well they pull it off. I like that the gear is still up. Looking good on approach here. Let's see how they handle it. A little bit of a hesitation because they're waiting for the doors to fully open. Gear is coming down slightly earlier than I'd like, and of course they're not using their fans, although I will say that is a nice smooth touchdown, all things considered. So we do have a slight early gear deployment, no VTOL usage, and at least the hesitation was kept to a minimum. So I'll say that's a 7, could be an 8, really could go for an 8, but it's definitely a 7. And we also have what appears to be a Starlancer Max, I believe. I didn't see the side guns. Yes. Now, I'm not going to rate the Starlancer because unfortunately you're going to see here the Starlancer has a very unfortunate problem. And this belly landing that you're seeing here is not a mess up by this Starlancer owner. No, the Starlancer unfortunately is bugged in this current build. The gear does not want to respond. Whenever you hit the gear button, it doesn't work on the Starlancer and the Starlancer tack. Don't know why, it just doesn't. CIG hasn't fixed it. So I'm not going to rate this Starlancer landing, this belly flop as it were. Anyway, let's see if there's anybody else to take a look at. And we have a Paladin also coming into the small hangars here. Let's see how well they do. Gear is still up. I like to see it looking very good as they approach. Alright, looking good, nice and controlled, no hesitation so far. Gear coming out right before they touch down. This is really good. I would like to see the VTOLs being used, but let's see how the touchdown... And of course, we are now going to get screwed over by CIG. This is the problem I was talking about earlier. Remember how I said that sometimes you'll see a wall pop up when the hangar is open? And I think it's because maybe possibly someone else's hangar... Look at that, and they even rotated all the way around, and CIG completely screwed up me watching that landing. That was a solid landing. You know what? I'm going to give you a 10 out of 10. Even though it technically wasn't a 10 out of 10, I'm going to give you a 10 anyway, just because I like your style, alright? I'm just going to give you one, even though you didn't use VTOLs. Technically, that would be like more like a 9 or something like that. That was definitely a 9, but I'm going to give you a 10. Because CIG screwed me over here. So yeah, CIG needs to fix that problem. That wall that pops up, I think it's like somebody else's hangar or something happens with the instancing of the hangar, and it causes that wall to pop up there. And if you're in the middle of landing and you get caught in that wall, your ship will turn pink, it'll explode, and bad things happen when you explode. And unfortunately, that also happens when you leave the hangar, but you can't see it when you leave the hangar. That's the worst part about it. The moment you leave the hangar, you explode as a result. And yeah, a lot of you out there, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've experienced it where your ship has just exploded like that, and it's really annoying. This Guardian here had a nice slidey landing there. Early gear deployment. Guardian doesn't have VTOLs, although that slidey landing I would like to see a little bit more controlled. So I'm going to say that's a 6 on that one, because there's also a little bit of that stair-step action. Alright folks, I think this is going to be a good place to cap things off for today. A lot of wonderful landings to watch here for this week's episode, and I think this is going to be a start of a very, 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 very beautiful season for Star Citizen in 4.4, and of course, 4.5 is just around the corner, man. Star Citizen has really been making a lot of strides this year. It's been quite incredible to see. So if you found today's video enjoyable, please leave a like as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to watch more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when new videos go live on the channel. If you also want to go a little bit above and beyond and support the work that I do here, consider becoming a channel member where you can find that you'll get early access to videos and exclusive members only videos as well. Let me know who you thought rocked it best in today's episode, and then I'll see you all next week at the same time. But until then, fly safe, because you never know who might be watching, and I'll see you all in the black.